Okay, and we are live. So, everybody, this is the Random Readalongs live show for ACOMAF for A Court of Mist and Fury. I am Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. You're here on my channel.
I'm Sarah Jane from The Book Life.
And I'm Kristin from What's Happening.
And this was our Random Readalongs book for June. If you are not familiar with Random Readalongs and it just happened to catch us on your timeline, I will leave a link for it down below so you can go and check it out. But this was our book. We actually read ACOTAR last year and discussed it in a similar live show. So we decided for June to do ACOMAF this year and kind of see our thoughts and stuff. And it's actually a surprising kind of difference. I think a lot of people have had the same reaction, so we're kind of going to discuss that. So let's all go down the line and say what we felt about ACOTAR so everybody kind of knows going in, you know, how we were feeling about the series before this even started. So everybody knows I did not like it. I always gripe about it constantly. Feyre was one of my most hated characters of last year, and I hated Tamlin, and I hated most of the book besides the last, like, 20% of ACOTAR. So I went into ACOMAF, like, with a really bad taste in my mouth from ACOTAR.
Yeah, same. I didn't like it, and I didn't even want to read it that much, this one, and I think we went into ACOTAR with such high expectations as well. We thought it was going to be amazing, and
Yep.
I was kind of, I think if I hadn't read this book with you guys and also our group, I don't think I would have read it. So to say I went in with like low expectations is kind of an understatement. The only character that I liked was Rhys, so.
Right, and that's probably one of the big motivators to pick this one up, is because it was about Rhys more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I mean, we didn't like A Court, so going into this, I was just like, well, you guys are going to read it, I'm going to read it, because I really wasn't going to pick it up. And I don't know the Persephone,
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
My
I don't
jam.
know that story. You know, so you love it. I'm like, I have no idea what I don't know. So just reading it for me was just kind of like, I guess I'll read it because we're all going to read it, and it's fun when some people like it, some people don't, and I was like, well, let's see what happens.
Right. I was fully prepared to drag this book. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going in, like, guns blazing, this thing's going to be shit. And now I'm like, I'm still bitter. I'm like, damn it, I loved it so much. And, like, so I'm a little bitter about it. But I think we can talk then now about how we felt about the transition between books 1 and 2, because I personally feel like they're two different books, like, completely. Like, they don't have a lot of cohesion as far as just, like, the tone of them and the characters, like, that are completely different, and, like, just everything is just totally different. So how did you guys feel about the transition? Because, like I said, I think I just take this book out of the series completely as something different, because I don't think that it relates to the first book really at all.
It's hard because I think I love the second one, and obviously I wasn't a fan of the first one, but it's not a case of, oh, I was completely wrong about the first book. Like, I still stand by everything that I said. I still don't like it. And
yeah.
While I didn't like Tamlin, like, if you remember, I really didn't like Tamlin. I don't remember exactly what we said because it was nearly a year ago, but I think I said something along the lines of he wasn't beastly enough for me.
No.
I'm pretty sure that's what I said. And the thing is, with him turning out the way that he did, yeah, okay, it worked for me because I didn't like him, but, yeah, okay, there were some warning signs in ACOTAR, but was it really set out that he was going to go that bad?
Right.
Like, I just kind of felt like they were like two puzzle pieces that were from the same puzzle, but they didn't necessarily go one after the other. That sounds really strange, but that's how I felt. I don't know, they do feel like two completely different books, and part of that's a good thing because it means that I enjoyed it, but part of it's not, because they should feel more fluid than what they actually were to me. Does that make sense? They don't feel fluid.
Like there was a chunk missing between the two books. Granted, there was like that 3-month gap, but really, like, I hate Tamlin. I mean, I hated him in book 1. Like, I hate him. But even though I'm like, did you have to drag him that bad? Like, did you have to drag him that bad? Because, like, yes, he had abusive behavior in book 1, and I pointed that out a lot with, like, anybody that was defending Tamlin. I was like, listen, he, like, bit her, and then, like, was like, no big deal, and I'm gonna rape you, but, like, not my fault. You know, that kind of shit. But it still was. Yeah. He still.
Because I love you, it's okay.
Yeah, he still told a line where you're like, okay, so I understand that some people are forgiving him for his behavior, like, whatever. But then you went into this book where, like, what, 5 chapters in, he was completely being a complete shit show. It doesn't make sense.
I feel like
I
was going to say, I just feel like if people liked him in ACOTAR, they probably didn't like what happened in this book.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's probably a case of, like, if you didn't like the first one, you like this one, and vice versa, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I remember distinctly liking Rhys in the first one. I think we all did, because like, you're supposed to, I feel like. You're supposed to like Rhys, but he's not the one right now. But everything else from book 1, like, I totally was like, what, the cauldron? Like, I forget what happens with the cauldron. Like, what happened? And, like, oh, yeah, she was under the mountain, but, like, we don't really know. Like, I feel like everything that's important, Sarah J. Maas, like, just brushes over it really quickly. And then, like, things that aren't really significant, she spends, like, 2 chapters on them. I'm just like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Like, so that's where I got confused. I was like, there was never cohesiveness, like Sarah Jane said, from book 1 to book 2. It was like, here's book 1 and all these people, what happened? And then we're just going to make it this book 2. Like, I don't know, did she even plan book 2 before she wrote book 1? Like, what happened there?
There's weirdness with it, where it's just like, I don't, and I'm fine with it because, like I said, I loved it. But at the same time, I'm like, we have these characters, like, it just is completely different, where, like, book 1 barely had any side characters. We had, like, Lucien and, like, pretty much that's it. And then book 2 has, like, all of these side characters that you're, like, really invested in. Book 1 had, like, just the one little, you only see this one little place, and book 2 has, like, I don't know, it completely, and, like, the story's so different because I know she didn't know a ton, like, Feyre didn't know a lot of what was going on overall in book 1. But then you just throw her into book 2 where, like, all this stuff is happening. I don't know. It felt so weird. But,
well,
like,
and also, so like the big bad is gone in ACOTAR, so it's like, where's the plot actually going to go from here? So I found that I was reading it, and some bits I was like, who's this again? What's happening? Like, it kind of felt a little bit disjointed because we knew that Amarantha was gone, and she was like this big bad, and now we've got people coming back from the dead and people, and I was kind of a bit like, I'm not too sure what this, it wasn't like a story where you get a little bit of it and then more is revealed. It was almost like, this was done, here's another chunk, and so it just added to the whole, like, the whole thing of the book not being cohesive because everything was different.
Right.
You know, and it was just, it was strange because I didn't even recap ACOTAR, if I'm honest, because I didn't want to, but it was strange. It was strange having it just felt so different.
Yeah, it just felt like there wasn't a nice definitive, like, here's the world and you can understand it, or here's the magic system, you can understand it. It's just like, here's the world, here's the magic system, there's stuff going around, like, and it's just like, where's the line drawn for, like, I don't know, like, you know, magic systems always have barriers and rules, and like, there's nothing, like, I don't know what's going on.
Speaking of, okay, I was going to talk about this later, but like, that's a good transition.
Okay.
Feyre having every goddamn ability in, like, from every single High Lord.
Too convenient.
Too much! It's too much. Like, I love it because I loved her so much more in this book, and I kind of love that, like, we don't have to have any training montages or whatever. At the same time, I'm like, that is so convenient and so overpowered. I cannot. Like, it's, even if she just had, like, I would make more sense if she just had some more of, like, Rhys's abilities or more of Tamlin's because they have, like, a bond, da-da-da-da. Maybe just a few of them, like, maybe like, accidentally a couple High Lords, like, drop too much power in there. But, like, every single one, and multiple abilities from every single one. Like, it's not like she just has Rhys's, like, mind stuff. Like, she can also, like, do other... Like, really? That is so much!
I felt like it was too convenient, like you've both said. It was way too convenient, but also she was a human. So for her to be human, to suddenly become Fae, and then have all of these abilities, and yet none of it overpowers her, it doesn't make her ill. I was expecting it to make her really sick at some point, or she'd have some kind of mental breakdown, or something like that would have been good, because then we could go, oh, you know what, even though it's convenient, it's also damaging. But it felt like there were no drawbacks, there was no problem to her having all these abilities, to her having this new life, and I just feel like she needed that. It's not all perfect, and I felt like it happened too easily for her, and she also managed to control every ability at the drop of a hat.
Yes.
Like when she did the wings, shape-shifting, it's like, sorry, when did you last shape-shift? Like, how could you do that so perfectly? It just felt like it just happened it was too convenient, but I could have dealt with that if the line had been a bit harder, if it had been, the journey had been harder for her. But everything about it was so easy and so convenient. Like when she was making those little water creatures dance, I was like, oh, just...
I love them, though. I love those creatures. Like, that's my favorite part. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool.
Right. I mean, I love all the abilities that she has, and it is that weird balance, because like I said, I do love this book, and I loved how Feyre was like a completely different person, which is why I liked her, and that she has all these abilities and she's a boss. But like, Like you said, I would have liked it to have come with a price. I would have liked her to at least have some kind of training, and especially if you look at this in the context of Sarah J. Maas's other work. And I'm not going to talk about Throne of Glass with like spoilers necessarily, but I guess I kind of I don't know, a little bit.
Whatever.
So that series has like Fae characters, and there's a Fae character who pretended to not be Fae for a while and had these abilities, and is relearning them. Okay. So that character who already had these abilities, knew about them, was raised with them, had a whole book devoted to learning how to do them. And it's like one ability that she was born with, knowing about it and being an entire book, training montages to like learn her shit. And then we have Feyre, who just was born human, didn't even know about all this stuff, didn't know about anything about High Lords, didn't know about magic, turns into a Fae and gets to have all this stuff and have no problems. Like, that's where I have an issue with, like, in the grand scheme of, like, her work. Like, you can't have a series where, like, that happens and then have this series where it's like, oh, no, this character's fine. No.
I just really would like to have had some kind of breakdown over it. I know that sounds really nasty, but if she'd have had some kind of breakdown, or she had, I don't know, rage or something happened where this power was, like, coming out of her. But also, why is there no repercussions of, like, all of these different powers being in one body? Because they're all so different, and it's almost like, I don't know, you're baking a cake and you throw too many weird things in, it's not going to work. Right. So I just feel like there could have been some really interesting repercussions from her having a power from every High Lord. Do you know what I mean? But instead it was just like, this is cool. And they're like competing powers too, because you'll have like, you know, like water and fire and it's like that should have mixed up in a bad way. And or they could have like nullified each other, and then she had to work really hard to separate them so that she could use them both because they shouldn't work in the same body. There's so many ways that could have been difficult, but everything was just a walk in the park for her, and I was like, why is this so easy? Right. And there could be the argument that like maybe in the next book that there will be repercussions, but there's no hint to that, so that's why it's like we can't even necessarily say that, because there should be some kind of hint of like, oh, I'm being run down, I'm feeling ill, No, she's not. I don't think there will be. Yeah, I don't think there will be either, because I mean, Sarah J. Maas's characters have to be special for this stuff. So, like, she's not going to have any issues at all. So, but I'm fine with it because I love her. Like, it's fine. I do like her a lot more in this book. Yeah. She's so much better, and she's just the boss. Yeah, like, I hated her. She just cried and complained the entire first book. And in this book, I think she, like, complains maybe, like, once or twice. I'm like, okay, like, you're getting, like, better. You know, like, she wasn't as annoying, and I think that's what made it nice. Right. Yeah. She was way better. I didn't even realize she wasn't as annoying until the bit happened when she goes to the log cabin. Because when she goes to the log cabin and she throws her toys out the pram. Did we just lose her? Oh, there you are. So when she goes to the log cabin, I was, like, reminded of how bratty she used to be. Right. And it made me realize how much she'd changed and how much better she'd got.
Right, and that little temper tantrum only lasted for a very short time.
Yeah, and I was like, I mean, to be honest, there was a few issues I had with that, which probably won't talk about now, but I just kind of, it reminded me how different she'd been, because throughout the rest of the book, like, she wasn't complaining, she was just getting on with things, and I feel like I can't like her 100% because of the first one. Right. Because her journey hasn't been as fulfilling as other characters who have started off weak. But it's still nice to like her, finally. Right, to actually pull for her and stuff. As far as, so one of my big problems, and I think we all kind of had this issue with book one, is that she really had no agency. So what do we feel about, like, her transition into book two? Because I feel like a big reason that I started liking her a lot more is that she took a lot of her agency back and made her own decisions. And there was, like, a few things at the beginning where, like, Rhys was one kind of giving her the ability to do that. But
you can make a choice between this and this. You can, you know, and like letting her choose, but in a way, like giving her the choice of two things still. Right. But being like, yeah, you can choose. Just being like, do what you want. Like, you know.
Yeah, it's still better than it was before. But I still have a slight issue with it being like, couldn't she just take it back for herself? Damn it. But like, at least in this book, she did have a lot more like, I'm making my own decisions. I'm yelling at people. I'm telling the guys to like fuck off constantly. You know, like, that's nice. That was a nice improvement, I thought.
Yeah, about, like, you know, she's growing her own tailbone and kind of standing up for herself, which I also thought was kind of funny because, like, the amount of times that, like, a vulgar gesture is mentioned in this book is, like, every other page.
Ridiculous.
I was just like, wow, she, like, she went from like not saying anything to just a trucker. So you're just like, okay.
Right. And there could be an argument made that she's like coming into her own, and this is who she would have been. And again, with me seeing every single Hades Persephone parallel in the world, like that's like, okay, maybe this is her being like, this is where I'm supposed to be, da 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 da. But at the same time, it's like she doesn't do it casually enough. Like Sarah J. Maas just beats you over the head with stuff, and you're just like, I get it, okay, I get it. Like there is no like slow progression. Like she just gets to the night court and she's like, fine, she's great, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's good. So, speaking of like lack of agency and really different characters, we kind of talked about this, but like let's go in more in depth with Tamlin. Like, how did you guys feel about that massacre? Seeing a man crucified in front of you, how did you feel?
Do you know what? The whole time I was reading it, I just kept thinking, if you really love Tamlin, you must be hating this, because it made me feel a bit, and I didn't even like the guy. I hated him. And I still felt like, really? Is he really this person? Like, I felt like he was a good person who made a lot of bad choices, and I didn't particularly like him, and he crossed the line sometimes, but I don't feel like he was this villain, and I feel like he's become a villain, and I really didn't see that coming, and I don't know how I feel about it, because I really didn't like him, but he was a love interest, and I just, something Leigh Bardugo said when I went to her reading thing, she talked about laying breadcrumbs, and I don't think Sarah J. Maas laid enough breadcrumbs for Tamlin to become this character that he's become. I feel like he had these negative traits, but I don't feel that there was enough breadcrumbs for where he's ended up.
Right. He wasn't this level.
No.
Like, I watching that, or reading that scene, because I wasn't watching it, but like, I, in a way, was like, yes, I knew he was bad, so now I'm like, okay, good. Like, I know he's bad, I didn't like him to begin with, so this just validates everything.
Right.
You know, but at the same time, I was still uncomfortable, because I was like, okay, this is exceeding the amount of bad that I thought he was going to be. Like, he just went from, like, annoying ex-boyfriend who, like, who was kind of dense, and, like, even though he did all these bad things, he wasn't really aware of how bad they were, to, like, okay, you're maliciously turning into, like, I don't know, Voldemort, so can you stop? Like, what's happening?
Right. Like, the level, like, I could have even, if they even would have stopped at him, like, trying to lock her up, because you could have made the argument that, like, he has PTSD, and they kept saying, like, you know, everyone has PTSD, basically, in this story, and that, you know, everything that he felt is amplified. He wants to protect her. You know, all of his things are amplified, whatever. Like, still really douchey. The study scene where he basically could have, like, really hurt her is... Yeah. But again, he's very in line with how he was kind of in book one. And then you have him, like, trying to abduct her, and then pulling in the king, letting the king destroy your entire country because you want this one person back. And, like, basically, in her mind, almost killing her sisters because, like, turning them into Fey. Like, that's against everything that they want with their whole bodies. That's, like, a whole new level. Like, that takes somebody into complete, like, villain territory.
Definition of psycho boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend. Definitely.
Like, insane. And just
you
not,
need to
not
give
even
up.
necessary.
She doesn't want you.
Yeah, not necessary. And just the fact that, like, why do we always have to have these male love interests in the first couple of books that ever turned into horrible people for you to break up with them? Like, that's not how every relationship ends.
No, some people have nice ex-boyfriends that they just didn't want to date anymore. Like,
or, like, you know, you just don't get along.
It's difficult because you read a lot of love triangles where when they start, they're with the first person, and let's be honest, if they're with them first, they're probably not going to end up with them, like, forever.
Typically speaking.
And so then they meet this second one, who's usually, like, the more exciting character, usually a bad boy, and they sort of start to like this person, but they still have feelings for the other one. I feel like with Sarah J. Maas, she's so maybe against doing the standard triangle that she tries to change it, but now the problem is it's becoming a trope for herself.
Right.
It's becoming her own trope, and it's like, actually, that's becoming even more predictable with her, and so that's kind of, oh, my headphones filmed out, and and it's just frustrating because I didn't like him, but I just felt like, okay, like, from the end of the book, you don't know what's gone on in the months that she's been at the night court, so I could kind of understand, even though he was horrible, I can actually almost understand that side of Tamlin because we haven't seen him go crazy without her. But what was with the Tamlin in the first, like, 10 chapters or whatever? I didn't even connect with him, and I think that's the him that I found the hardest to connect with because it didn't have any connection to the previous story, and even though he did do things that we didn't like we knew we were onto him.
Right.
But it's just kind of, it's hard to connect the two, I think, and it's just...
Yeah. Because, like, I didn't like Tamlin, and I borderline hated Tamlin in the first book, but not for, like, I don't know, just he wasn't as bad. Like, even the things where you have, like, the whole tithe thing, and he's, like, basically being like, I'm gonna, you know, if you don't pay up, I'm gonna kill you, and da-da-da-da-da, and then you later find out that, like, not every High Lord does this thing, whatever. But it's just stuff like that where you're like, why are you that douchey? Or, like, when you find out that, like, he helped kill Rhys's entire family, like, for no reason, like, they were friends, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm gonna help my parents kill your family. And you're just like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you do that? So it would just be better if, like, even with that kind of story, that we had him being, like, manipulated by his family, which maybe he would have been. We just don't know that side of the story. But, like, if they were friends, and then all of a sudden he went to, like, kill Rhys's whole family, like, why didn't we have any of this, like, transition? Again, it's one of those, like, even with that story, we have this no transition between one of the two. No breadcrumbs. We have no breadcrumbs.
Yeah, there is no breadcrumbs, and I think that's just kind of how I feel about it. I don't dislike that Tamlin became a worse character because for me it kind of justified the way that I'd felt about him all along, but I just don't feel that there was enough connection between first Tamlin and second version of Tamlin. Like, it just it felt like it jumped, and if it jumped for us when we didn't even like him, imagine how much it must have jumped for people that loved him.
Oh, I've heard from some people, like, some of the people in the Wolfpack were really big Tamlin fans, and they were reading this, and they were just like, what the fuck? Like, because it's just like, where did this come from? You know, so that's...
Yeah, like, who are you? The character.
Yeah,
I learned to love.
As well, like, okay, Tamlin did bad things, but there are some books where not Tamlin character, but there are some books where some of the things that Tamlin did would have been done by the bad person that gets their redemption. So it's not like, oh, he locked her up, therefore he must, of course, be horrible. Let's be honest, there's lots of books where that sort of thing would happen, and yet they still end up being the person that, like, I'm not going to say any books because, you know, spoilers, but I know that you're probably thinking, like, what I'm thinking. There's some books where that happens, and they're still the character that you root for in the end. So I don't feel like everything that Tamlin did, even though it was bad, I don't feel like it necessarily predicted that this would happen to him.
Right. Yeah. Let's turn the page to, like, the other side of that. So we can talk about Rhys, but I want to specifically talk about, like, Rhys and the mating bond stuff, and like changing, kind of going back and seeing how different he was even in book 1. Now that you know stuff from book 2, you know, how do we feel?
Also, one thing I thought was cool was that she actually went back and explained why Rhysand did what he did, and that was, like, I think the only thing that connected book 1 to book 2 was because you actually got to see him bumping into Feyre for the first time and, like, what it really meant, or him even, like, earlier in the book when she steals the ring, he's like, oh, you actually did it because you thought it was because of this, because I was double trading, or I was, like, having a manipulation over you, like a double meaning, but really it's a triple meaning, and I actually need you to steal the ring and get it, and because you're my... So, like, I think that with her writing was pretty cool, and I think that was one of the things that I really got excited about, because that's what I like about, like, series like Harry Potter, where a book 4 or 5 is relating back to book 1 or 2, like a sentence or something that was mentioned, and you're like, oh my god, how did I not see that? So that's the breadcrumbs. So, like, that's what I liked about that, is, like, it made me like Rhysand more, because I was like, oh my god, he has a deeper meaning for everything, and, like, he's really, like, you know, because I was kind of iffy about him in the beginning when he was manipulating her. I was like, I don't know, he might be doing the same thing, but I still like him more. So
I loved him, and I loved, again, I like, same as what Kristin said, I loved seeing his reasons, not necessarily his reasons, but his backstory. I loved understanding why he did the things that he did, and that's just our favourite kind of character at the end of the day, because it's one who does these bad things that you would normally go, okay, there's no coming back from that, and then you find out why, and it's not forgiven, but it's their redemption, isn't it? And I liked him in the first book, but I felt like, actually, as far as character progression, his is the only character arc that I feel like is fluid. His is the only character arc that I feel like has meaning and it makes sense, and I think he is the only character that I feel has had a really good arc so far.
Yeah.
Because even though I like Feyre, obviously we feel like it's disconnected. So yeah, he's been good. I like him.
Yeah, I like him too.
I like him.
He's great. I like the mating bond stuff. Like I kind of, we might have talked about that. I called that along with like everybody else in the first book when he stumbles and he's like shit. So like I love that was definitely confirmed and even talked about, obviously, and that was a breadcrumb that like we all saw.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that, like, okay, here it is. And
she left a whole loaf for that.
I have a lot of feelings about
yeah, right.
like, I have so many emotions about that, even though it is a very perfect thing, like, oh, of course, like, now it's easy because you guys are mates and da-da-da-da-da. But I'm just like, it's great.
Yeah.
So good.
I mean, I love it, and I like seeing all of it happen throughout this book, so I'm sure you're going to ask us a question, but I just loved it. I was like, yes, this is good.
And you know what I said earlier about the whole cabin thing? I feel like this is a good point this is a good time to bring this up. So when she's in the cabin and she's having her hissy fit, of all the things to question, she's questioning why he didn't tell her.
Oh my god, I know.
I literally wanted to shake her because it's like, if he'd have told you, you would have had the whole, well, what's the point? Because if this is my destiny, what's the point in even questioning it? And you would feel like you had lost your voice. You would have felt like she'd lost her voice. And the whole point of this time is that she's learning to get her voice back. And if he'd have told her, you know, you're destined to be with me, she would have felt like she'd lost her voice before she'd even got it back. Right. Now, I know that's a lot for one person to kind of reflect on about themselves, but of all the things for her to be annoyed about, it was that he didn't tell her. And she kind of forgets that he'd also been through a lot, like those first 3 months. He's trying to get himself back together, and he's trying to be the good guy and leave her where she is, and it wouldn't have done her any good whatsoever if he'd have brought her to the night court, saved her on that wedding day, and gone, by the way, you're destined to be with me. Like,
right, after you were having a panic attack about being chained to somebody else. Like,
yeah, exactly, and it felt like she would have lost her choices. So I just felt like, of all the things for her to be annoyed about, it felt almost a bit immature. Like, it felt very YA for me. Yeah, and I think what could have been nicer would have been, I don't know, just for argument's sake, she knows that everybody else knew about it, doesn't she? So what if she had this thought of, what if those people never would have liked me if I wouldn't have been his mate? What if me feeling like I'm part of this family is only because he's chosen me? And all things like that. Those would have been like genuine concerns. But I felt like all those things, or she could have said like, now that this has been chosen for me, because it's like fate, what if I'd wanted to love Tamlin? What would have happened if Tamlin had been a good guy? Would I still not have been able to make things work with him? Like, all these questions that I wanted her to ask herself, and instead it's, why didn't he tell me?
right. And she leaves him, like, bleeding in the mud, and I'm just like, bitch? Like, are you serious? I was so mad at her that moment.
And then
at least it didn't last very long. Right.
Yeah, and I'm like, seriously, you can't just paint somebody else's cabin?
Right. But she can, because she's her.
She just paints everything.
Yeah, and that was a big, like, oh, it finally comes back around, and now she paints again, like, da-da-da-da-da, and, like, he makes her want to paint again with his, like, sexy body. Okay, we got it.
Oh, and his wings.
And his wings.
Yeah.
We can't talk about his wings, okay? Little bat boy, like, hanging in a cave, like...
I know, I love it.
Love him. I just think of him as, like, a little baby bat. Just, like, a little... He's so cute.
He's just waiting for his moment to shine.
Right, he just, like, is my time yet?
He's just so cute.
I love him.
I love him.
Little baby. Yeah, I loved that this book was obviously about him and, like, their mating bond. And again, I talk about this in, like, my actual discussion, but, like, all of the Hades Persephone stuff that was steeped on with this, and, like, their bond, and the fact that they're equals, and the fact that they, like, they're both badass, and the fact that they have, like, this outward image of being bad, but they're not. It just hurt.
Yeah, it was good, and I like how she is connecting these stories that she's basing them off together like that. You know, it is quite clever, although we don't necessarily see the connection all the time. You know, to have the first one be like Beauty and the Beast, and maybe it works better to have something that isn't as well known as Beauty and the Beast. Like, although a lot of people do know Hades and Persephone, with Beauty and the Beast you associated so much with Disney. Right. That's where, like we said that last time, didn't we? That we felt like people are connecting it with that, and that's not original either. You know, whereas with this, there are so many retellings of that anyway. It's okay to have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Whereas in the first one, you expect it to be, even though you know it's a retelling, you still expect certain things.
You have more expectations, so people didn't have it as much with this, which is nice. But I was given a little gift, a little package of wonderfulness.
Well, I thought you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it because of the fact Hades and Persephone, you know?
Yeah, I was going into this like, girl, if you F this up, I'm gonna be mad. And
I'm not.
Like, I'm actually, like I'm okay with that. All right. So we should probably talk about the Court of Dreams because we're gonna be talking about that play for a while because all those side characters and all the connections to other characters and everything. Yeah. So, how do we feel about our children?
I just love
so
them all.
I know.
It's hard. It's hard to like choose a favorite.
Yeah, like I like Cassian, but I love them all, like, for different reasons. And, like, I think I like Cassian the most because he's, like, kind of the most underspoken, but when he says something, it's just, like, real dry, and he's like, and he, like, says something, and you're just like, there's Cassian, he's there, but he's not, but he says something, but, like, I don't know, they're all so great, and, like, I want to see more of, is it Elaine? I want to see more, I don't know, I feel like there's going to be more with that story.
The sister?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, I think.
I did think of something, and I don't know if you guys have thought about it, but so we've got, obviously, Feyre and Rhys, they're mated, and now we've got Lucian and Elaine, they're, you know, whatever.
I think I know what you're going to say.
So, what I'm going to say is, surely not her other sister, what's her name, Nessa, surely she's not going to become mated with Cassian, because that's just going to be like, are you serious? What, you've all fallen for like 3 Fae? And also, the thing is, if it doesn't happen, what does that say? Because I'm really shipping like Asriel and Moore, like really bad, because I want them to be together. Cute. But if they were like fated to be mated without meaning to rhyme, surely they would have felt that already. So does that mean that they're not meant to be? Or if they do get together, does that mean that they're not each other's like forever because one day each of them is going to find their real mate? Like, the whole mating thing is great, but it kind of leaves this big grey area because what does that mean for the others?
Right, who aren't mated? Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe they are, but like they won't admit that they are, you know what I mean? But like it's still annoying. It's like, does everyone have to be mated?
Well, that's what it made me think of when Sarah Jane was talking, and when I was reading this book, I was like, everyone's paired up. I was like, this is like Twilight. Like, all the vampires are just like all together, and there's always that one character, and I'm like, oh my god. I was thinking that Tamlin or Cassian is gonna like imprint on somebody's like kid. Like, he mentioned pregnancy in book 2, but babies are coming out in book 2. Somewhere in book 3, there's a baby. All these mates, all these people together. There's got to be a baby somewhere. And who's imprinting? Like, it's got to happen.
Oh, God.
Actually, that moment was a little bit like that.
Yeah.
It's weird, though, isn't it? Because, like, with Rhys and Feyre, like, we ship them. We want that to happen. It's really hard to be excited about a potential pairing when you're kind of like, I don't really know how I feel about this yet. And with that, you know that Elaine's choice has already been taken away from her, and I know it's meant to be romantic, but I feel like her choices have been taken away, and whereas like with the whole Rhys thing, because we know, but we don't know. I sound like Friends now. We know, they know, we know. Like, we know it, but it hasn't been said out loud, and I kind of like that, so I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like it's really setting out for the 3rd book, though, isn't it? Because I think Lucian's going to help her because he's in love with the sister.
Right, and he kind of, thank God, because Lucian was like such a, like, I was annoyed with him in this book, even though, like, I wasn't annoyed because I was still on his side and I want to, like, defend him. I'm just like, dude, you were, like, what? Yes! You were one of the only good characters in book 1. And you just turned into, like, a little wet mop in book 2. And I know that you're being, like, basically, like, borderline abused by, like, your friend, and you have a history of abuse and whatever and all that stuff. Like, I do get that. I'm just like, really? So I feel like this is his, between that and just him kind of knowing that the mating bond can't be broken like that, because I think he knows that, like, you can't break that. Which you would think the king would know that. Like, like, how, really? Like, everyone else knows that you can't break a mating bond, but the king doesn't? Like, really? But
yeah, you can't break an unforgivable vow or whatever.
Unbreakable vow. Yeah. It's the same thing.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be that much of a big deal if you could break it.
Yeah. So that's
like, oh, I don't want to mate with you anymore. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah,
so
like
I
if
feel
you
like
fell out, you could just go, I'm breaking it off like it's a divorce.
right. Right. It's obnoxious. So I feel like between that, him knowing that, and then also him having a mating bond, that is going to bring him back into the fold. But it is an annoying way to kind of do it, because it's like, can't you just do that? Again, can't we just have characters have their own agency without outside forces, like, making them do something or motivating them? Like, can't they have internal motivation? They
well,
can't.
that's one kind of like, I like Lucien in book 1. He felt his own motivation, but then, like, in this one, you didn't feel it. It felt like he was being really controlled with Tamlin. So I'm like, I feel like in book 3, it's kind of like he was in this, like, you know, fraternity with Tamlin, and he's like, oh no, my bro's gone dark, like, and like now he's like, maybe we need to like stop him, like, I hope someone help me. So that's why I think that pairing of Feyre and Lucien are really gonna go and like knock down Tamlin. Like, they're gonna be a spy within a spy, you know?
I mean, thank God too, because like she does need help over there, even though but just like Lucien, like
pretty bold
book.
I hope, though, that we still get a lot of Rhys. The fact that she's gone back has left me with this unsettling feeling, because obviously in this book we saw so little of Tamlin. I'm like, oh God, please tell me that this doesn't mean that we're going to see. Like, I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
Now she's there the whole time. I hope that the third.
I don't think she will be
colliding. Like first.
See what I.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
But I was thinking, because at the end of the book we got what the heck is? Oh my God. I just had a brain fart. We had a Rhysand chapter, so I'm thinking maybe book 3 we might have dual perspective. Yeah, because maybe that was a breadcrumb. Maybe she actually did a breadcrumb.
I think because he had like her sisters and stuff there with him, so I think you're gonna see all of them and all of the like Night Court people also see her. And I don't think it'll be the entire book where she's done with him. Like, I think it might be like. Because I just don't think they'll be separated for that long. And I think they still do have a slight mind connection. Like, it's not as big as it was with, like, the promise or, like, the bargain. But they still, like, she said that she could still, like, ping to him a little bit. So it wasn't completely, you know.
It's like they can send a feeling.
Right. Right. Yeah, she can send a feeling down there. So that's nice.
Yeah.
But as far as, the Court of Dreams still, with all of that.
I love more.
Yes. How do you feel about, like, their backstories and stuff? I think that they actually, like, I'm surprised by how we got all these really great side characters and all of their backstories fleshed out. It's amazing.
Yeah,
we didn't have in book 1 like at all.
I wasn't expecting that at all. Like, I wasn't expecting to find out about all of their backgrounds in the way that we did, and I just really, really liked that, and it was really nice to have her meet more and there not be like this instant like rivalry thing. I felt like that would have been really cliche, and it was nice that they did form a friendship, because I think that's something that Feyre has never really had. She's never really had like a female friendship that's been genuine. So that was really nice for her. But yeah, it was nice to get those backstories, because I didn't think we were going to, and I liked them before we had that. So it was nice to get that extra bit of information. So yeah.
And I do love the, like, found family narrative with them. Like, that they're a family, but that they all found each other, and, like, that's really good.
Yeah, I like when they said that about them being brothers, and they were like, oh, we're brothers because...
Yeah, like, all bastards are brothers.
Yeah, and I just love that.
It's so cute.
Yeah, I did love that. I like the Court of Dreams. I like more as well. So it's just, like, it was nice to have a band of new characters with all of their stories kind of coming together and reading all about them at once, rather than like some series where you get like one person's story and then one person's story. Like, we kind of just got to learn all of them really quickly. So I liked that, and it kind of gave that camaraderie. Like, you're just like, yay, we're all like a group of friends, a family, and we're like, we just get along. And I thought it was good. I thought it was unique. Something that she hasn't done in any of her other work, which was nice to like see her finally like progress somewhere in her writing.
Yeah, as far as like friendships and big bands of friends. I always am a big fan of like large friend groups.
It was nice that we cared about them all.
Yes.
That's pretty as well. I really liked that.
Like instantly you're like, oh, okay, I love you. So that's great.
Yeah.
Like
when they're having the little party when there's all the stars and they're dancing, and I'm just like, oh, I could just see it so clearly in my head. That was another thing. Even though I still have some issues with her writing style, and there's some things I read a sentence and I'm like, this literally doesn't make sense. Like, I know you're trying to describe something, but that's not how you describe this.
Right.
that still happened, but I felt like when I was reading the book, and I know I kind of do this anyway, where I literally play out the scene in my head like a little movie, but it really, really felt like a movie, and I could see it so clearly, and I just loved that.
Yeah, I had that moment too, because usually I have a hard time picturing scenes, but I had a lot of, it was very easy for the most part for me with this as well. So there is a running fan theory that I didn't realize a lot of people had, and apparently they do, as far as the crossover between Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, ACOMAF, whatever. So I figured, like, she has 2 Fey series. There's probably some crossover. Yeah. And I feel like we got hints with that, with the prison and with Amryn, of these beasts that have come between dimensions, and we have this kind of, like, interdimensional stuff going on with Throne of Glass. I haven't read Queen of Shadows, so, like, I don't exactly know. So, you guys might know more. Oh, you haven't?
I've read it, though.
Okay. So, with that whole crossover, so do you guys kind of feel like there's going to be a little bit of, like, Easter egg dropping for potentially Throne of Glass? Not necessarily, like, any plot stuff where you have to read both series, but just, like, it's going to be, like, the bad princes, like, the demon princes, basically, from the other series. I think that might be some people that are in the prison in this series.
Yeah, I did wonder that, and also I couldn't remember this, so this is probably like a really silly thing to be saying on a live show, because if I've said something really stupid, I can't take it back. But doesn't she in Throne of Glass go to this other dimension?
Yeah, in like the second book, there's like some travel between.
Like she goes through that like archway or something.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering if that dimension is linked in some way, because we haven't seen a lot of that yet, and I'm kind of like, well, in this world where there's both humans and Fae, and in this one there's humans, wool, then Fae, but then at the side it's got like fairy lands and all this stuff, and I'm kind of like, what? I think there is going to be a link there, because I think it would be very, very hard as a writer to kind of write 2 stories, both based on the same kind of almost mythology, like fantasy, like fairy stuff, and not have them connect. I feel like it's got to be one big universe. But I don't feel that it's going to connect in a way that's going to make it matter. It is just going to be like an Easter egg for those who have read both of them. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any type of, like, you need to read one to read the other. It's just going to be like a mention of something, and you're going to be like, oh.
Right.
Cool.
Like, if you read one series, you're going to be like, oh, okay, that kind of thing. I don't think characters will over meet, or, like, there's going to be any necessary, you need to read one or the other. But speaking of Faye, how do we feel about her sisters getting turned at the end?
Convenient.
I was waiting for someone to die. I was like, oh, the first one made it out, second one's totally dead. She's dead. She's cooked. She ain't coming out. Like, and they both survived. I'm like, God, like, everyone, no one's dying. Everything's surviving. Like, everything's just being. I was like, what the heck?
Right.
Yeah,
it's a very, very convenient thing. And then with the, like, if all of the human queens survive it, that's convenient as well, because the whole thing is, like, you're only really going to survive if you're very strong-willed or whatever. It's like, so shouldn't a lot of those human queens, like, if they all survive and become Fae, like, that's a little too easy. Like, don't have the warning.
If Elaine can survive it, then pretty much they all can. I'm not saying that as in, I don't like her as a character, but she's very meek, isn't she? She's very sweet, and if she can survive, I think Nesta, sure, I'm not surprised.
Nesta I thought was going to be fine.
Yeah, but Elaine, if she, I not in a horrible way, I hope to see a lot of kind of issues with her, because she's not going to adjust to, or she shouldn't, from her character, she shouldn't adjust to this quickly. Neither should Nesta, but for different ways.
Yeah, Nesta will do better, I think.
feel like it's one of those things where, it's all bad now, but in the end she's going to have both of her families together, and they're going to become close once again, and I kind of reject that, really, because I feel like there's too many stories where families are brought back together, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but why would it have been so bad for Feyre to have kind of gone off on her own and had her own life completely separate?
Right.
Because it's not like
she was like abusive family.
Yeah, it's not like she was so close with them, and this has like put the final piece in the puzzle. Like, she wasn't.
Right.
And some connections don't need to be repaired in books.
Right.
Like, sometimes you can just, if something can break and it can stay broken, and you leave it to one side. I don't really feel like it was necessary for them both to survive, which sounds really harsh, but
that's what I'm saying. I was anticipating some type of death happening, like somebody, or like, you know, and then everything just like kind of got wrapped up nicely for, you know, book 3, and I was like, okay, like, all right, and they said it's like, yeah, like they gave you the precursor. Oh, only a strong-willed female will make it through, and like blah blah blah, and then everyone just makes it through. You're like, okay.
Maybe there's some after effects later. Like maybe everyone can transition, but only the strong will survive it. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe they're the ones that are gonna get sick or something from magic, and Feyre is just so strong that she doesn't get sick.
And Feyre will heal them with her magical fairy fingers. Like, I mean, it's just gonna, like, she's too OP. But yeah, like I feel like she
couldn't do at this point. Like, I genuinely think if someone said, "We need you to literally turn into a cloud and float along," she'd go, "Yeah, sure." She'd be
sure, I can do that. It's fine. Right.
It's rain as well.
Exactly.
I did it already.
Exactly, and I feel like, again, the sisters were brought in as love interests for the other characters, which is just kind of like...
Because they can't pull a woman on their own.
Right. Like, everybody has a love interest. Like, even Amryn has that guy from the summer court that, like...
And they're all straight.
And they're all straight! Oh my god! I'm so mad.
It's so boring.
I am so bitter. And we could have had... Like, we didn't need to have the sisters brought in, because we could have had a really nice polyamorous relationship with Cassian and Azriel and more, and now we've been denied that because everyone has to be monogamous and straight.
Which, let's be honest, for Faye, you would think that that kind of thing would be believable. Like, I would believe that in that scenario.
Yes.
To be honest, like, I didn't think about it until I watched your video on it. Like, I didn't even consider it. And then when you said it, I was like, but this is the kind of world where that would be believable.
Right. Like, if we have a fantasy world, we do not need to abide by our, like, even Western world standards. Like, why are we doing this? Like, I'm sure they do not care whatsoever.
Everyone's white
as well. They're immortal.
Straight
and they have such long lives. They're not just going to be like, yes, this is my person, and this is my person forever. Like, there's going to be some exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And why can't we, I mean, we don't need to have everybody be, like, you know, unconventional. We'll just call it that. Because, you know, whatever. No. We don't have everybody be like that. Yeah. But, like, you can have a few. Even one, I would have been happy, like, not happy, but, like, I would have been okay with even one person who's, like, bisexual, something.
And you want to know what that would mean in that world as well. Like, I'm genuinely intrigued to know what having a different sexuality would mean in this world. Like, would people be okay with it? Would there be issues? Would some people be okay with it and some not? What if it's a different rule in one court and in another? Like, what if in the summer court, like, it was completely frowned upon, and yet in the night court you could be as, like, free and make your own choices? I just feel like that would have been a whole other layer that would have been really, really interesting, and it's almost like she's afraid to take that jump. But then at the same time, if she doesn't feel comfortable doing it, I'd rather she didn't, because otherwise it would annoy me even more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's just like, why write fantasy if you're going to make it, like, so straight edge that it's just...
I don't really feel like it was new adult. I really don't. And
yes. Let's talk about that for a second, too, with, like, okay, everyone's like, it's so steamy. And I'm like, it's the same kind of steam as there was in the first book. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, this thing is so much more graphic. Like, no, it's not. It's the same.
The steamiest scene was the throne scene. The other two were just kind of like, and here we go, and we're done. And here we go, and we're done. I was like, what?
Right.
I was like,
and everyone's like,
chapter up for like a paragraph?
5 or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, it's like a normal... And I do think, like, there is some kind of, like, as far as how it's marketed, because now, like, new adult isn't really a marketing thing for most publishers or most bookstores. So, like, bookstores don't have a new adult section.
And there's not a lot of new adult fantasy either.
Right. So they stick it in with all of her YA to keep it all together, which is a little problematic because I do think it is too graphic for, like, younger teenage audiences. Or at least people should be aware. Because it does blatantly say, like, it doesn't fade to black, and it is blatantly like this, they're having sex. Like,
and if penetration, you connect as well.
Yes. So, so that is an interesting, like, with, like, how are we really marketing this, whatever. But as far as people who are mature enough and make the decision to read it, and whatever can handle that kind of content, it is not that steamy.
Yeah. Like, I was seeing all different things on Twitter, and I was like, it made me laugh, but I kept seeing different statuses, like tweets where people were saying, you know, little lines, or they were doing jokey faces and stuff, and I was like, oh, I cannot wait to get to this.
Right.
And then I'm reading it, and I'm like, look, maybe this is because I have read the Fever series, and that is a series about Faye. But
that's what I was thinking.
This book, if this is like a raisin, whereas the Fever series is like a bunch of grapes.
Right.
Like, it's literally nothing. And so I just kind of feel a little bit like, okay, yeah, it's not. It for me, it felt like a YA book with the added.
Right.
Stuff.
It is. It's like the added
That's
couple
what
chapters of sex.
Yeah, like I was reading it, and when she was like, she's a fairy, and then she's like, oh, I have to look for this magical book. I was like, oh my god, this is like the Fever series happening. Like she's looking for a book in the fairy world. I was like, what? Yeah, and I was just like, this is like the same concept as like the book. And then I was saying to Sarah Jane, I was like, have these people not read like Fever series? Because the Fever series, like, hey, because I'm halfway through Fae Fever right now, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then to read this, I was like, nothing's happening. Like,
it's almost like you go.
I thought this was gonna.
It's like she's towing the line.
I was reading like
be two things at once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, everyone has a different standard. So if you are a young adult reader and you only read young adult and you've never read anything in an adult
then
genre
yeah, it's going to be so different.
It is going to be very, but I still don't think it's much steamier than book one. Like book one, maybe it had like one additional steamier scene, but book one had like the sex scene and had him like biting her, which was like very sexually charged or whatever. So I don't feel like it's that much steamier, and everyone's like, it's so much steamier, and I'm like, it's not. It's like the same as book one was. Like,
it's just because you actually like Rhysand, I like him the whole time. Where like with Tamlin, like the sex scene happens and everyone's just like,
they're like, ew.
Yeah.
I do think that she got a little, like, as far as Sarah J. Maas's writing, she got a little better about writing sex scenes in the second one, because the first one, I was like, stop talking about sheathing things, and, like, just, ugh. Like, I get very, I don't like reading sex scenes anyway. Like, I will skim over sex scenes, because I'm just like, I'm okay with sexual content, but, like, I do not care about graphic descriptions of anything with that. Like, I'm just like, it's fine.
Yeah, it's weird, because, like, I'm more interested in, like, the build-up to something. Than actually the event itself. Like I can read, or even should I say even write a scene that's like leading up to this stuff for ages and ages and ages, and I love using all these different words and really. But then when it actually comes down to the nitty gritty, I don't really want to know, to be honest. And I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone's a YA reader and they're and they are a teenager, then we're not saying go ahead and read this book. It's not steamy, because it is, but I think it's just kind of
it's funny for us as adults to be
for adults, and kind of this is a book that's really, really steamy. It is, in my opinion, it isn't. And maybe that is because I have read a Fae book that is incredibly steamy. But
like if you grew up like we did on like urban paranormal fantasy, like you're fine. Like
exactly.
Go read the Anita Blake series. People go read Fairy Gentry.
Yeah, like, whereas I suppose if you've only read, things like Throne of Glass or something, and then you come into this. I mean, the thing is, we're saying like maybe these series are going to connect. How's that even going to work? Because wouldn't it suck to be reading, YA, and they'd be like, oh, I can't read. I can't read ACOTAR because I'm too young.
I think that was our first our problem with ACOTAR was like, because that's why we were intrigued, like, oh, it's supposed to be like new adult, but it's not, but it is, and like there was that whole struggle with this, and then now we have book 2, and it's like new adult isn't still really a genre, so where are we putting this? And then because they're putting it side by side with Throne of Glass, and it might be that, like you said, that lap over, it's just like, where do you put this? Like
what does this mean?
Yeah, so I understand, like, if you had a 13, 14 to, like, 18-year-old teenager reading Throne of Glass and then reading this, they're going to be like, oh my god, this is really steamy. But for, like, a lot of the statuses that you said, Sarah Jane, you saw, and then, like, people saying it's so steamy, and then, like, we read it and we're like...
You're like, okay.
It's just kind of like, is this really steamy? Is it really steamy? Because I thought the best scene was the throne scene. Like, that one, I was like, oh my god, this is
like,
good.
Oh my god,
nothing happened, but it was steamy.
Right.
I was like, okay. So that's what I thought. But I was like, wow. I thought more was happening, like the next chapters, nothing.
Yeah, it is weird to know where it would sit in a bookshop. Like, I find that quite weird, because when I bought ACOTAR for last year's read-along, I remember going into Waterstones, which is our version of like Barnes & Noble basically, and they had this table, they had a corner which was all YA stuff, and all the bookshelves, but then they had a table in the middle, and there were things like John Green and Cassandra Clare, and then there's this, and I think that's not right.
Right.
That isn't okay.
Yeah.
Like, and having read this one as well, it's like even just some of the words used, you can't put that in with children's stuff. Like I feel like I understand that they're trying to market the book, and naturally you want to put her books together, but I don't know, maybe this is me being like really sort of stick in the mud, but I don't think it's okay to have it grouped.
It does fall in like a really weird spot, because I don't think it belongs necessarily next to like George R. R. Martin either. You know, like where are you going to stick it?
Books need ratings like films. I know. I know I've gone back to it, but the Feyre series, when you turn it over, depending on what edition you've got, on the back it's got little icons for different things. So it has like a little heart, and then it says that it's quite a steamy book, and then it's, you know, like almost like the violence and things like that. I feel like a lot of, say, YA to new adult should all come standard with these things, and then you know what you're getting. I know it's like a completely different debate, but I just feel like it's a bit of a grey area, like where does this book sit? But I don't feel like it's a problem with the book. It's probably more of a problem with like the
how do you market it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
When I was reading it too, I was thinking about like, the live show tonight, and I was like, I feel like Sarah Jane is going to be like, this was quite vanilla, because that's what we always come down to.
I've been trying so hard not to say it, because I say it every time, and about
I was like, every live show we say it.
I think we do.
And I'm sorry, but in my opinion, I've just checked my window's not open. My opinion, because it actually was, Rhys and Feyre have quite vanilla sex, and I'm just saying it, and that's how I feel, and yeah.
Yeah, it's not anything.
It's now closed because people walking past would be like, "Good for you."
Right.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the book itself wasn't vanilla, but then them together. I mean, come on, that's not steamy.
No. Right. No, it's not anything. It's not anything to write home about.
Nothing I haven't read before.
No, exactly. As far as the last thing I want to talk about before we talk about like the very end of the book is, how do we feel about, I don't even remember how to say her name, Iantha or whatever, the like priestess?
Yeah.
Do we feel, since she's basically like Iantha, whatever.
I just read it as Iantha, but I don't think that's right.
Yeah, the eye priestess.
I don't
her being so sexually forward and trying to sleep with everybody, do we feel that, we're not going to get a magical baby with Rhys and Feyre because they talked about it and they're doing birth control, which God bless. But like, are we going to get a magical baby with, like, Tamlin and that crazy girl? Because I feel like we will. Because she wants to, like, be impregnated by every, like, powerful whatever. So I think that's going to happen.
Hadn't considered it, but I think it's a high possibility. Because also, again, that would take it more into that new adult territory. Because you wouldn't have something like that happen in YA. So, yeah, I think that's a possibility. Or she might kind of... Not that I'm saying like she'd pretend she was when she wasn't, but I feel like she's so desperate for this power. I think she
and trying to rub it in Feyre's face and
she
like
could do anything. Yeah.
I mean, what are we gonna do about Feyre being there with like Tamlin and needing to technically sleep with him? Like according to him, you know what I mean?
It's strange because I feel like this Iantha is like Queen Lavanna in a way, like just very begrudging and like malicious and like everything she's doing. So like she's gonna want Tamlin to possibly have this pregnancy, but at the same time like Tamlin's with Feyre, so it's just like where is this like fitting? Is she gonna like steal Tamlin away now because Feyre wants Tamlin, but she doesn't really want Tamlin? She wants to kill Tamlin, like, you know what I mean? So where is this gonna happen? The pregnancy, I think, possibility. How? I'm assuming Tamlin. No.
I think something has already happened between them.
Right.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's happened already along the same timeline, and that there's going to be a point where he was lonely and he was angry and she comforted him. Like, because he's.
Right.
I personally think that it's already happened.
Right.
Whether that's resulted in anything, we don't know, but I think it's already happened. I do think that Feyre's going to get out of having to do anything physical with Tamlin by saying that she's really scarred from Rhys. Like, I think it's really going to hurt her to say that, and I think she's going to find that really horrible. But then I think she's probably going to have some kind of internal dialogue where she's like, he believes me because I'm so repulsed by saying it, he thinks I'm actually repulsed by it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I feel like she's going to pretend that a lot of stuff happened to her so that she doesn't have to do anything with him, and he's going to believe that because he's going to believe such awful things, because when he said, did he hurt you, and she's like, oh, I know what he's saying, I feel like that is perhaps a breadcrumb for how she's going to get out of it. And I think that's probably because people aren't going to like if she actually has to go through with it. That's just going to make people feel very icky. And so I think she's going to get out of it by saying that she's so traumatized, and because she's been traumatized by other things in the past, I think she'll be able to pull it off.
True.
What do we feel like, and I think we all might know already, I think this has been confirmed, but the next fairy tale is going to be, for book 3, I think, is supposed to be Snow White. Or Sleeping Beauty.
I didn't know that.
I forget which one it's supposed to be.
I didn't know either.
Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, I forget. One of them that has to do with, like, a curse and True Love's Kiss and da-da-da-da-da.
If it's Snow White, if it's Sleeping Beauty, I'm interested, but I don't know if it would be, because I know it sounds really stupid, but because the first one is called A Court of Thorns and Roses, well, Sleeping Beauty would involve thorns, so I feel like that title was already, wouldn't that be the perfect, so I don't know if it...
I think it is Snow White. It's one where, you know, Princess falls under a spell and has to be released by True Love's Kiss, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
I don't know, and again, I don't know if that's going to be her falling under a spell, or him, or, like, Rhys falling under a spell, or, like, who's getting, like...
Or Tamlin already being under control, manipulative.
Right. Oh, I'll tell you what, if he fell under a sleeping curse, I'd just put him in that coffin and shoot him down the river. And be like, yep. Just bury him. Just bury him. Yeah, he's good. It's fine. Yeah,
I mean, I'm fully ready for him to get destroyed.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, at this point now, I'm just like, oh well, like I didn't like you, but now I'm just like, if you're gonna die, and I'm gonna cheer. So.
Right.
But I am intrigued though to know what he's been up to in the time that she's been away. I do still want to know that.
I wonder where book 3 is gonna pick up. If it's gonna be like,
I think it's
like 6 months later, or it's gonna be like
it'll be
6 months before, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't, we get information right away. I hope.
Yeah. Or like a few weeks. It might be like a few weeks, and she's sort of, she's been there a few weeks now. It probably will be, actually. It probably will be a few weeks, and she'll say that she's been able to put off being intimate with him so far. She doesn't know how much longer she can keep that up, and she hasn't had anything to read down the line, and I think that's probably where it will start. I don't know. I'm actually like, I know all the answers, and I really don't, and I'm probably going to be completely wrong about everything.
I am curious, though. I have had a few people comment on my review and gush about it, saying that they think that Tamlin is going to get a redemption arc. I don't think he will.
No.
If anything, maybe at the very end. Maybe at the very end he might, like, right before he's about to, like, basically die. I don't think he's going to be, like, fully redeemed at all. Like, I think they're just too obsessed with Rhys to, like, fully redeem Tamlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would see him get, like, a... Like, it's not that Lucien's bad, but, like, he is, like, diminished a little bit in this. So, like, I feel like him getting a little more of an arc, or, and a redemption arc might be a little more, like, endearing, and
I think it's going to focus more on Lucien, definitely, instead of not Tamlin.
Yeah, and he's going to have to go against Tamlin to get that. So it wouldn't really make sense if Tamlin then got redeemed as well, like this. Redemption overload.
Yeah, we don't need any Tamlin redemption.
No, I'm not interested.
I don't want it.
Right. Yeah. He's gone too far off the deep end. We don't need to bring him back.
But it's interesting to be at a point where I want to read the next book. Because do you remember when we finished ACOTAR and we were all like, I seriously don't even care?
Yeah.
The next
like, I do not care at all whatsoever. But now I'm like, all right, how are my kids?
I need to know.
Yeah, and that's interesting to be in that position. And I'm surprised that I care this much. But I'm still not going into it completely overjoyed, because when you've got sort of one that's been bleh and then one that's been good,
right, like how do you I'm hoping to kind of view the last two books as like their own separate duology, that they'll both be really good, but I don't know.
And it's still it's going to recommend overall. Is it a trilogy or is it a series?
Trilogy.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure, but I was like, I think it's supposed to be. My question is, what color do you think book 3 will be?
You see, again, if it was Snow White, you'd think it would be red.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm just curious if it's gonna be like the red, blue, green theme, like the trilogy.
Oh gosh, it could be. I would not be surprised.
Right? I think it's gonna be black.
I feel like it has to be dark because it's
I was gonna say it would make more sense for it to be like white, but they've always had the white text. So that wouldn't really make sense.
Yeah, don't go pulling color changes.
And also, are white, aren't they? I know that's the UK ones, but even so, I think it. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna say.
Or like even the name, like because like I didn't feel like Mist and Fury was like I like the name of that, but it's like it didn't really relate to anything in the story.
Why didn't it say something like a court of stars and blah 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 or something? Stars, darkness,
or like stars and dreams or night and dreams. I don't know. I mean, Mist and Fury does evoke like a night court feeling, even though that's not how the actual night court is.
Yeah.
So they probably couldn't have that title because then it would spoil the fact that the night court's not actually bad.
Maybe Stars and Fury, or Dreams and Fury.
Right, yeah, like any of that. But
because she did that misting thing, but Fury?
Yeah.
I mean, that's anger, but kind of I think of Fury and think of Furies, you know, like...
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's...
I'll be interested to see what the... I hope the last book's good. I mean, there's potential for a lot of stuff to happen. Obviously, everyone's going to get paired up and mated up and, like, happily ever after. Yeah. And I hope that someone dies, but I'm afraid it's going to be, like, people I love, like Cassian or Azriel. I can see one of them going.
I really think Cassian's going to die. I'm just putting it out there.
I really thought Cassian was in this one. Did you get that?
No.
I didn't get that.
I said I thought Cassian was going to die at the end of this one. Like I thought Cassian or sister or like
whose wings are messed up? Is it Azriel or Cassian?
Cassian.
Cassian's wings. And Azriel's like near dead with like the arrow or whatever, right?
Yeah, but we know. Oh yeah, I was gonna say she can save him, but she's not with them now, so.
Right.
Interesting.
But yeah,
I was like, she's not there.
Any of them dying, but I also don't feel like Sarah J. Maas will kill them off. Like, I really don't.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
It will kind of frustrate me if it ends with like her and her two sisters and they're all happy and Faye and like have a really good relationship with each other, because I kind of feel like they never had that and you can't make that out of thin air.
Right.
So it will be interesting. I feel like I have a lot of expectations now again, which is...
I know, it's dangerous territory.
Dangerous. It is very, very dangerous, but I suppose we'll be reading the third one for...
Oh, yeah. So join us next June.
Yeah.
Woo!
We will see. But, yeah, so...
That would be so cool, though, to read, like, each one as a group.
As it comes
out.
One
a year.
Yeah.
Like, I think we kind of have to.
Yeah, and since it does have so many mixed reactions, like, the whole series has such a mixed feeling that it is a good series to discuss and stuff. But
it is. I have so much more to say about it, rather than, like... I mean, I liked The Forbidden Wish, for example, but once you've said the things that you like, you're kind of done. Whereas with this, we've got so many theories and how did this change, and I just felt like I had so much to say. And while it would have been nice to have had a few days to kind of jot down some thoughts and let it go over in my mind, it was also quite nice to come to it, literally finishing it today, because you know when you get to that point, you're like, I literally just need to talk to someone.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to run to Tumblr and like scream into the abyss for a while after I was done with it. So no big deal or anything.
I'm not reading a book that late again, though. I'm telling you, next time I'm starting it. Like it was the pressure. I was like, what if I don't finish it? What will happen?
We're not making any promises. It'll probably come down to the wire again for me.
Right? I'll probably read it immediately because I'm trash now.
I was laughing.
Now.
There was a part in one of the it was like one of the last chapters where like Feyre was like sorry, I just lost my voice. Feyre was like something trash, I'm trash, blow trash, trash, and I was like, say
trash or something.
That is me.
She just said trash like 40 times. I was like, what's happening?
So funny. Alright, so
I was just giggling.
What is our biggest wish for the third book? That's how we're going to end everything. What do we want?
You mean plot-wise, or?
Yeah, anything-wise, or one thing that we need.
I've got mine. I wish that Tamlin doesn't get redemption, because I feel like redemption is saved for very special characters, and I've always said redemption is sexy. I think that's what we actually bonded over, Sam, the first time we spoke. And if he gets redeemed, that will ruin that, so I don't want Tamlin to get redemption. Sorry.
No, I agree.
I'm so cold.
I just hope that he's not. I don't think this will happen, but I'm just gonna put this out there just in case. I don't want her to be stuck in that court for very long. Like, I want us to learn why she's there, you know, like, how she gets out of it and stuff, like, halfway through the book, you know, like a big war or something. I don't want her to be stuck there the entire book because it's going to get boring. And if it's like this book where she's just in the other court the whole time and there's this little wrap-up at the end in the chapter and then that's the end of the series.
I don't think that'll happen. I really don't.
I don't think so either. That's horrible, though.
I need to make sure. So I have to wish it.
Right, you have to wish it into the abyss.
I've thought of something.
Yeah, guaranteed.
I've already said mine.
What?
Well, I hope it doesn't turn into a full-on love triangle.
Oh God, no, I don't think it will.
I don't think it will.
I don't think so.
He started to get his redemption, and then she was like, "Oh, I see the person that I fell in. I will be done."
No. Yeah. Again, the one good thing about Sarah J. Maas being like in love with Rhys is I don't think that she'll ever like go back and like do anything with Tamlin, especially because we have the mating bond that's like obviously impossible to be broken. So
it would be silly, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be way too silly.
Yeah.
What's your wish, Sam?
Separate. I'm doing something separate from like Feyre and Rhys. I want Mor and Azriel to be together and be happy.
Yeah.
Like really bad. Like obviously Rhys and Feyre are like my OTP, but like they're my second OTP. Like I.
Did you ever think though that you'd have an OTP from this?
No,
book?
no.
Oh.
Who would have thought? I'm still mad.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm making up a tag at the moment. I've been working on it for a while, and one of the questions I honestly have created because of this book, like something that you didn't want, and then it happened because I just was like, this needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
This is the biggest turnaround I think I've ever had.
Yep. Same.
Yeah.
Never felt this like passionately about the second book as in the opposite of the first book, like.
Yeah.
Ever.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of does it make you think, you know, if there's books that you read and then you're like, I'm not continuing, it really does make me kind of think maybe sometimes I will continue. Yeah. Not because it's happened to I was going to say, happened to me, but you know, it's interesting.
It's only happened to me with Fallen Kingdoms, because book 1 and 2 I wasn't really into, but then book 3 I was like, yeah,
book three, man.
I haven't even read
that. So like I kind of get it, but at the same time I'm like, damn it, it's just like, it's kind of like a slogan that they say, you're gonna have to like date all of these, you know, frogs until you find the prince, you know, whatever. It's like, yeah, read all this crappy book until you get to the good ones. Like, dang it.
ACOTAR is a frog.
It is.
Yeah, it's
lumpy, disgusting, slimy toad.
Tamlin is a toad, and Rhys is the prince.
I've had plenty of people ask me, like, on my review, like, oh, should I read ACOTAR to, like, get to ACOMAF? And I was like, yes, but skim read it. Like, you don't. Like, it's trash. Don't even.
If it's up on recaptions.uk or whatever, just read that part.
Yeah, just read that. You don't. It's fine. It's fine.
Luckily, it's a small book, though, isn't it? Like, I was putting the two up on my
in comparison.
I'm so glad that it's shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I saw, I know, Kristin, you got it first, and you were like, oh, it's massive, and I was like, oh, God. And then mine came through the post, and my mum was like, because she was staying over, and she went, oh, you've got a parcel here, and I picked it up, and I was like, please, no, don't be ACOTAR. And I opened it, and I went, oh, no. And she was like, what? It's so big. She was like, it's so weird. And I was just dreading it. I was dreading it, and it
is almost like 700, right?
Yeah, it's over.
Something like that.
I'm never rereading ACOTAR, so it's fine. But I'll gladly reread and tab the shit out of ACOMAF when I read it next. I'm excited.
Hopefully the third one will continue in this good.
Yes.
Because I think we're going to feel really betrayed if it doesn't do justice.
If it goes back downhill, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just going to be like, this makes me so angry because we've seen how good it can be, but I feel like, I don't think that's going to happen though, because I feel like what happened with Feyre, it was clearly a conscious decision because she wanted her to grow. It's just that it wasn't done the best way. But I feel like that's what we didn't like, and that's changed now. So surely we must be out of the woods yet, you know?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's it for our ACOMAF discussion. So thank you all for joining us for the Random Readalongs read-along group. We had a lot of really good discussions on the Goodreads group, and it was really awesome, and we had a great time. And thank you all for joining us for this whole live show. We had a lot of fun discussing. So we will definitely let you guys know for the next book, but obviously next June, feel free to join us for our Court of Blank and Blank. So thank you guys for watching. I am Sam from Thoughts on Tomes.
I'm Sarah Jane from The Book Life.
And I'm Kristin from What's Happening.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.